Welcome in, everyone. It's Peter Tragos, the lawyer you know, and today started jury selection for the McMichaels and Bryan federal hate crimes trial in Georgia. So we're going to break down what we know so far coming out of the courtroom, how that jury selection is being conducted, how long it would potentially take, how long this trial is going to last, and what that jury could look like. So a lot of you have been following along with the state case and the federal case here on our channel. So if you have, and if you continue to like these videos, make sure you're subscribed to our page and get in the comments and let us know what you think. Okay, and in this case, just for some fun, we're gonna have some guesses and some prognostication for our guesses in the comments as to how long we expect this to take in federal court based on how slow it has started today. So in federal court, most of the time, the judges ask the vast majority of the questions in jury selection, and only certain portions of this jury selection are even open to the public. And so the way the judge is seemingly conducting jury selection at this point is 25 potential jurors at a time. 25 come, they make some cuts, they send a chunk of them home for good, then they send a chunk of them home to come back next week, and they bring in another 25, and so on and so forth, until they come up with, I think the judge said her number in the sweet spot is somewhere around 36 potential jurors to pick from. And every time 25 new jurors come and they are sent home, then the next 25 come until we get that chunk that we are actually going to pick a jury for this trial from. And the judge said this jury selection is a marathon, not a sprint. So the first guess I want you to put in the comments is, how long do you think it's going to take to pick a jury in this case? I believe it took almost 2 weeks in the state case to pick a jury for the murder trials of the McMichaels and Roddie Bryan. So will it take longer or shorter here in federal court? I will give you a hint or help you make your guess because nobody knows how long it's going to take. Usually federal court goes much more quickly. And that's obvious with how it started today. Of the first set of 25, it was actually a pretty diverse group, especially when you look at what most jury pools look like in federal court. Out of those 25 people, there were 15 men, 10 women, and 6 jurors who identified as black. And that's according to people in the courtroom. So we have a pretty diverse jury, and of those 25, 16 have been told that they are going to come back next week. It's almost like a job interview. Come back next week to be part of the big group that we're actually going to pick the jury from. So 9 got struck today and sent home for good. Let's talk a little bit about how they were struck. Well, the judge's first question to the group was, is there anybody in here who hasn't heard a single thing about this case? And guess how many hands were raised? None. All 25 potential jurors have at least heard something about this case. Now, there were various amounts of people who had family in law enforcement and had been involved in other cases, which is common questions in every jury selection. Sometimes the lawyers will want to dig in a little bit more, but that was the major question that we heard. And then a very interesting thing happened. Behind closed doors, they continued to interview each individual potential juror one by one. And I think there was some indication that the lawyers were allowed to ask some questions. The last federal trial we were allowed to provide written questions to the judge. The judge actually asked the questions, but they were the lawyers' questions. So I don't know if it's going on like that or if the lawyers are actually able to ask these individual potential jurors questions themselves. But either way, behind closed doors is where most of the questioning was happening in this case. And again, federal court, so the public doesn't necessarily get to see everything. So we do know, based on a combination of what happened in open court, what was reported, and what we know about why some of the jurors were struck. There was one juror who knew Roddie Bryan, knew that he worked on some lawn equipment, things like that, and she felt bad for him. Therefore, she was struck for cause. There was another potential juror who felt like if the defendants don't testify, they must be guilty. And we've talked in the past that that's not right. That's not what our Constitution says. That's not what the law says. Therefore, that juror was struck for cause. And you better believe that the government and even the judge tried to do things to rehabilitate that juror and say, well, what if the judge instructed you this? What if we tell you that's what the law says? Can you follow the law? Can you put your own personal beliefs to the side and try to determine this case based off that? So even after a potentially attempted rehabilitation, that juror was struck. And the third, that we actually have a reported reason why they were struck, it was juror number 35, because they already felt the defendants were guilty and they couldn't sit through this trial because they have ADHD. So it looks like they were trying to get off, if you ask me, by saying, no matter what happens, the defendants are guilty, plus I have ADHD, I can't sit still and I can't pay attention to this trial. So they were let off for cause, along with 6 other potential jurors. So 9 of the first 25 are gone, and 16 are coming back next week. So hopefully you didn't put 5 days in your guess, because it doesn't seem like it's possible for a jury to be picked this week in this case, since these chunks of potential jurors aren't coming back until next week. So the next set of 25 is being questioned right now by the judge and the lawyers potentially. We will have some more indications of who was cut for what reason, what this jury pool looks like, whether or not it's a diverse jury. We're going to learn more about each of these potential panels every time they come through and every time we get more reports out of the courtroom. But one of the things that's interesting, this ADHD and why some of the jurors are probably sent home for scheduling issues, is the judge expects this case and this trial to take 2 to 3 weeks once the jury is selected. So if the jury selection takes a month, it's still going to be another 2 to 3 weeks, not 2 to 3 weeks total, including jury selection. They think there are going to be somewhere between 7 and 12 days of the actual cases in chief. So if it's 7 days, obviously that'll be 2 weeks, because 5 days in a week and then 2 days. Or if the court's going to take off Friday, which happens a lot of times in federal court, 7 days is clearly going to be 2 weeks. And then 12 days is going to be spread over 3 weeks, because there's 5 days in a week, weekends don't count. So that's how 7 to 12 days becomes 2 to 3 weeks, because that's how it works in the criminal justice system, especially in federal court, where things move quickly in jury selection because the judge handles most of it, but they work slowly throughout the trial usually because there are more breaks. We start a little bit later, we end a little bit earlier. Sometimes we take Fridays off because we're on the federal court's schedule. We're up to and at the mercy of the federal judge. So we'll see how long this trial actually takes. But for now, we're in the midst of jury selection. A lot of interesting things are happening. We have a diverse jury. We have some people who feel bad for the defendants, especially Roddie Bryan, which I think is a common sentiment, at least on this channel. And then we have some jurors who obviously think the defendants are guilty based on what they've seen and based on the state case probably, who aren't giving the defendants a fair shake, which I think we also have some of those on this channel. So let me know if you're on one of those sides before this trial in federal court on hate crimes, not murder, even starts. Have you already made up your mind before the trial starts? Hopefully not. Hopefully you would be able to sit and listen and continue in part of this jury selection. But if you have, you'd be sent home and struck for cause. But we're glad you're here. So make sure you get in the comments, like the video, and subscribe to our page so we can continue talking about this trial and so many others that are happening right now in our judicial system. Thanks for watching this episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you like this content, please share it with your friends. Make sure you subscribe to our page and like our videos. If you want some interaction, get in the comments and we'll be sure to get back to you. If you want to know any more information about our firm or this page, you can find out in the description or visit tragoslaw.com. We post multiple times throughout the week, so make sure you hit that bell so you can get the notification and not miss out on the next episode.